Hi, everyone. Hello. Greetings. I'm Monique. I'm the community manager of Breakthrough T1D Play, our gaming and streaming and all things fun arm of Breakthrough T1D, which is committed to finding cures, supporting advocacy and education efforts for type 1 diabetes. And I am joined today with a really great stream to kind of bring us back into the T1D Tuesday mood with one of our board members from Northern California, Breakthrough T1D chapter, Kim. Hi, Kim.
Hi, Monique. Great to be
Hi.
here.
Great to
Hey.
be here. I just want you all to know I said this to Kim before, but Kim has been on a post-it of mine for like over a year of like, get Kim on the stream. Okay. Because it's been told to me that Kim is so well spoken, really has her handle, like a really on her finger on the pulse of what's happening with type 1 diabetes research and updates. And one of our co-founders, Hans, was so impressed and he told me to put her name down. And so I did. And it took a while, but we did it. And we're here now, and I'm so excited to go through some research updates with you all because there has been a lot happening, right, Kim? In like research and improvements and advancements for type 1.
Yeah, more all the time.
More all the
Absolutely.
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's dive into it. Do you mind just introducing yourself to our crew here today?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Monique, and to Hans, and to your sticky note. Um, glad to glad you can finally clear that one away.
I can.
So my name is Kim, and as Monique said, I'm on the board of not JDRF of Breakthrough T1D. I said I would do that.
Hey, we're all struggling. It's all good.
I'm on the Northern California chapter. I live in Northern California, and my role on the board is to know about all of the research that's happening in order to communicate it to the community so that you all can also be on top of all the research that's happening so that we can help ourselves and our loved ones with T1D avail themselves of all this great research and to just know what's coming down the pipeline. I'm also a volunteer with Breakthrough T1D on something called the Clinical Trial Education Volunteer Program, which is a national program. There are people in every region really looking at what clinical trials are happening so that we can make sure that we fill those clinical trials so that we can get these advancements to market faster, and also take advantage of being part of these clinical trials where a lot of times we can therefore get treatments that aren't on the market yet. And it's really exciting. You're contributing to science while also potentially benefiting yourself. So I'm part of that group as well. And I got involved about 5 years ago when my daughter, who is now 18 and headed to college in 3 weeks,
Wow.
was
Whoa, big transition.
it was her last day of seventh grade. She was
Her
diagnosed, and
last day?
yeah,
No.
all
Oh,
her friends were going out
no.
partying in the street, and she was going to the hospital. That was a bummer.
Oh my God. That's
Yeah.
awful. She's never going to forget that.
Yeah. On the other hand, it was almost summer, so it was good
Yeah,
because she was then home with family while dealing with it. So
right.
not the worst time.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God. Can you talk us through how that happened with her diagnosis?
She had been, really thirsty and getting really skinny, and we just thought, she's just growing up and changing, and it's, getting to be summer, so she's drinking a lot. So we kind of ignored it and feel, of course, horribly guilty in retrospect about that. But
How did you
um
know? Yeah.
yeah, but eventually we're very, very grateful to her pediatrician because I called her up and I said, we're really busy, so we probably can't come in, but I just want you to know what's going on. And I told the pediatrician, she's going to the bathroom a lot and drinking a lot, all those normal signs of people, who have type 1. And she said to us over the phone, I think she has diabetes. And I just said, I don't even know what you're talking about. There's no way. That makes no sense. Because I knew nothing about type 1
Wow.
diabetes. And I was
Yeah.
like, my skinny little athlete doesn't have diabetes. And so I said, okay, that's interesting. And she said, I'd like you to bring her in today. And I said, well, we don't really have time. It's her last day of school and she has gymnastics practice. She's only free from 2 to 3. So if she can come in from 2 to 3, that's great. If not, we'll deal with this next week. And she said, well, let me transfer you to the front desk and see what they can do. And they, of course, said, oh, yes, of course, she can come in at 2 o'clock. They've clearly cleared the decks because they knew
Yeah.
what was going on. So I'm really grateful to her pediatrician for
Wow.
diagnosing her over the phone. and getting her to the hospital to get care.
Yeah.
That was her diagnosis story. She went to the doctor all ready to go to gymnastics practice straight after. She wasn't feeling that badly yet. So, we
Wow.
were lucky. We caught it, in sufficient time for her not to have gotten unhealthy. But definitely spread the word. I think it's just interesting how people do miss it, and the signs are really clear, but people just miss it. And
Right.
I've heard stories of nurses and doctors missing their children's diagnosis because they don't believe the
That's
signs.
why I
So
think saying neglect
yeah,
is like, that's a little
I
hard on
know it's a little
yourself,
harsh on myself. Yeah,
mom.
yeah, I know it's all right.
Yeah. I mean, God, you have all these other things going on top of trying to diagnose your kid. I mean,
Yeah.
you do the best you can. Yeah. And same in chat. Yeah. Well done, pediatrician, and parents did a great job, obviously, of describing symptoms. That is a good point,
Thank you. We'll take the
Josh.
credit. We'll take the credit where we can,
Yes.
Josh. Thank you.
Yes. Oh gosh. Well, obviously now you've gotten so involved in everything type 1 diabetes, breakthrough T1D. I mean, your daughter must love it, or maybe sometimes gets annoyed by it over time. How
Well, I
how does she
think,
like it?
for me, and the reason I got involved with Breakthrough T1D was because I was, as soon as I knew what she had, I obsessively looked into all
Oh,
the
of
research and
course.
all the clinical studies and wanted to just be on top of what, how can we do the best by her? And so when I met up with people from Breakthrough T1D, this role seemed like a really good fit because I was going to continue to be informed and wanted to be able to share what I was learning with as many
Yeah.
people as I could, so that anyone who has a diagnosis or a loved one or has T1D themselves can really know what not it's not just about research, but there are actually things on the market that I feel like people don't know about,
Right.
and don't avail themselves of, and we can all learn so much. I feel like when you have a loved one with, as everybody on this Twitch stream probably knows, when you have a loved one with T1D or have it yourself, you kind of become your own doctor because
Mhm.
you have to treat yourself every hour of every day, and you can't wait for quarterly doctor's appointments to
Right.
learn what you should do next. And so I think the more we can be informed, the better we can manage. And yes, of course, Monique, my daughter, loves that she has access to all this information and
Yeah.
also sometimes says,
Yeah.
enough.
I don't want to talk about my type 1 anymore. Yeah, that's the other piece of it. I too feel like when, it's your loved one and you're like getting super involved in something related to them, sometimes kids just want to be kids. And so that's got to be tough too. But at the end of the day though, obviously this is a huge part of their life. So it's
Yeah.
got to be an interesting thing to balance as a parent of a T1D. So I would just love for you to kind of dive into, since you started, searching in 2019 everything about T1D, like what are some of the achievements that you think Breakthrough T1D has helped kind of accomplish in the maybe since the beginning of the year or maybe beyond that you can
Yeah.
maybe speak to for our community?
When I first got involved in Breakthrough T1D, it was partly because um, some volunteers, probably outreach volunteers, said, "Hey, let's meet up. I'd like to, offer you what support I can." They brought us that.
How did that first start? How did they know to contact you?
Well, when this is sort of like a little inside secret about how Breakthrough T1D operates. They have people on staff in every region who are outreach
Right.
staff people, right? So, um, and if you have had somebody diagnosed, you might have received a little bag in the hospital with, a bear and
Rufus.
information. Yes, Rufus the
We
bear.
love
Thank you.
Rufus.
Love Rufus. My daughter, who's 18, still sleeps with Rufus,
Oh, you see
and
my Rufus? Rufi.
oh, very sweet. Okay, I don't have to feel bad for saying that then if you have
No.
Rufus too.
They
Um,
actually, I'll pause you for a sec. They can actually earn Rufus by fundraising over $1,500 a season with a custom shirt on it. So a
oh,
lot of
that's
our
awesome.
streamers who never got a Rufus now have a Rufus, which is super cool. So
Very cool.
yeah,
Very
yeah,
cool. We love it.
yeah.
Such comfort.
I know.
Yeah. So that bag that you get in the hospital, that in order to have the patient get that bag, the endocrinologist reports back to Breakthrough T1D who are all the newly diagnosed patients, so that staff members from Breakthrough T1D can reach out to those patients and offer them access to the community and
Love
all the
that.
wonderful things that brings. So
Mm.
that's how I got in touch, was that the community outreach volunteers in our chapter learned that my daughter had been diagnosed, and they just, reach out gently and say, hey, if you'd like to, talk to somebody else who's had a kid with this for a while. And I jumped on the opportunity, met this woman at a cafe. Her name was Lisa Colbury Fisher, if anyone knows her. And I was just so blown away by her generosity. She drove an hour to just meet with me and chat with me, and
Wow.
just offer, you know, that kind of support and tell me about all the different community events where I could learn more about what was happening with type 1 diabetes. And so I initially thought Breakthrough T1D, that's what it was, that it was a sort of like a community support organization.
Mhm.
And I didn't really learn until like a month or two later that Breakthrough T1D is really responsible for, I mean, like, I don't know, 80 to 90% of the research that's happening. I mean, when I look at the clinical trials, I think there's maybe like 120 clinical trials right now for type 1 diabetes, and something like 100 of them have been funded by Breakthrough T1D. So, it's not just about community, it's so much about the research and funding the research that's happening. And I don't think anything would be happening if it weren't through, the fundraising that we all do and the research that Breakthrough T1D then very selectively funds to ensure that, all these new things get to market. So I was already blown away with the organization as giving this kind of community support. But then when I learned about the research, that's when I really decided I needed to jump on the board and get more involved. And back to your question of like,
I
what
love
am I
that though.
excited about?
Yeah. What aren't you
Long
excited
way to
about?
get there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but long way to get to your question about, I think it's so hard. And I don't have the job of figuring out what research Breakthrough T1D should invest in. That's done at the national level. But I think that just has got to be the hardest job, because I
Oh
feel
my
like there are
god.
so many areas that are so promising. And if we could just fund different areas a little bit more, so much could happen. Yet at the same time, we want to balance how much money we put into cure research versus, like, I care about cures dramatically. I think we will see cures. But not in the next 5 years, and we also have to deal with the next 5 years. And so there are
Right.
other things happening in management in terms of just making life easier, faster insulins, and longer wearing pumps and CGMs. There's so much happening, and balancing where the money is going, I think, is one of the biggest challenges. Breakthrough T1D is very focused right now on investing in cure research, while still supporting all of these other more
Right.
incremental
Portable
developments in
insulin. Yep.
care.
Mhm.
But a lot of the bigger companies that, like Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly and others, are also putting a lot of money in research, or, Dexcom or Abbott are putting a lot of money into, furthering their technologies. And so that's where I think Breakthrough T1D is really playing a focused role on cure research. But I find it all really exciting and really important. And in terms of what's happened in the last year, I mean, I think on the cure side, I don't know if this is the last year or the last 2 years, but we've really solved the problem of stem cell replacement therapy. So we now are able to, and through the Vertex 880 trial and other trials that, ViaCyte and other companies have done, we now know that we can take, you know, stem cells that were, manufactured in a lab, and put them into people with type 1 diabetes and have them produce insulin. And I think there's like 20 people that have now gone through that Vertex 880 trial, and they're
20
all,
now?
I think it's 20
Wow.
now. Yeah,
That's
something
epic.
between like 15 and 20. And they are all, they're at different stages. So they're not all insulin independent, but a couple of them are, not on insulin anymore. And they're
Mhm.
all looking at, rising C-peptide levels, which is a marker for the fact that they are producing their own insulin. They all are using less insulin, they all have better time in range. So it's just incredibly promising that we can do that now. And that's, it's not enough, but it's new and it's like the
Right.
first step of a cure and it's really exciting.
That's super exciting. Yeah, I think our communities, you all have heard about the VX trials. Like we've been really kind of keeping you up to date because it's very, very much newsworthy in type 1
Yeah.
diabetes research and where we're at with treatment. So, but if you guys want to learn more, let us know. DM us. Obviously, we're happy to send along any additional information. And also, too, I mean, there was just a recent update at the ADA scientific sessions, too,
Yes.
which I think you kind of alluded to there, which is really fantastic. I don't know if you know like the specifics of what was presented.
It's 14 patients that
Wow, that's
in
a lot.
the update. And let's see, patient one needed no insulin, had an A1C of 5.3. The next patient now only needs 4 units a day. For anyone who has type 1, you know how easy it would be if you only
You
needed
need
4 units a
4.
day.
Yeah.
The third patient needs no insulin. And then all 14 patients, the islet cells engrafted, so it's working. They're naturally producing insulin and they've all had decreases in A1C. So
Wow.
it's really early days to know the results, but those are pretty exciting
That's
results.
huge. Huge.
Yeah.
Oh man. Excited. Yeah, we're getting some hype in chat. Let's get some hype. Come on. So cool to hear and see that.
Yeah.
Um, so looking ahead to, next year, what excites you by what's out there? I mean, you alluded to how there are over 100 clinical trials active right now.
Yeah.
Beyond that too, I mean, what excites you?
Yeah. I mean, I think, that those islet cells working within humans is awesome, but we still have the problem that the immune system, because if somebody has type 1, the immune system is going to attack those cells. So right now, those trials, like the VX880 trial that Monique mentioned, is a trial. People have to take immunosuppressive drugs if they're going to be in that trial, and that's got its own side effects. So the next step is really protecting those cells against the immune system attack. And there are a lot of trials happening right now. Vertex is offering two other trials. One where they are creating like a protective pouch for the cells so that they can't be attacked by the immune system. And the other is one where they're gene editing the stem cells,
Oh,
so that
yes.
they might be evasive or hidden from the immune system attack. And it's not just Vertex. Cernova is working on this. Novo Nordisk is working on this. So there are a lot of different companies, and they might not all succeed, but I feel like there's enough happening there, between the gene editing and the protecting the cells through like encapsulation, and there's a few other methods. It's early days. There are human clinical studies. There are people who have these packets in them. There are people who have gene edited stem cells in them. So we don't know the results of any of these
Right.
trials yet, but I feel like there's enough happening that, something will probably result in something that can protect the cells from the immune system attack, which is really the next step in a cure. And there's just so much work happening there. That's something I'm super excited about on the cure side. And I'm going to jump really quickly because
Yes.
I am so excited about GLP-1s like
Okay.
Ozempic, which is a completely different topic.
Yes, let's talk about it.
But I feel like this is something that isn't talked about enough with type 1 diabetes. It's out there for people with obesity and people with type 2 diabetes. And there have been a few small studies of people with type 1, especially newly diagnosed people with type 1, who have gone on these GLP-1 drugs like Ozempic and not needed insulin, or needed a very, very reduced amount of
Really?
insulin.
I haven't heard
So the
anything about that.
effect, exactly, and it's incredible. And yeah, so Breakthrough T1D is actually running a clinical study of a combined GLP-1, and there's another drug called SGLT2s, which effectively have you not they basically have you pee out the glucose, for no better way of like saying it
Oh,
simply.
sure.
So they're combining those two drugs, which are shown to really help people manage their type 1 diabetes so much better, and doing a clinical trial. The reason I think people haven't heard about this so much is Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, which are, fabulous companies who have brought insulin to market and are now, bringing these GLP-1s to market. they're doing very well with, the GLP-1s with type 2 diabetes and obesity.
Oh,
And
sure.
some initial clinical trials with type 1 showed, some DKA, some hypoglycemia. And I think it makes complete sense to me, because if you need less insulin, if you don't adjust your settings and you take or to adjust your insulin intake and you take these drugs, yes, you're going to have some lows. So I think the trials just need to be managed really well. Breakthrough T1D is doing that now. There's another company out there. It's called Carmot. It was acquired by Roche, that is doing clinical studies with
Wow.
GLP-1s and type 1. And I will just say anecdotally, my daughter, who is not newly diagnosed, she's had diabetes for over 5 years now, really pretty clearly has no C-peptide and does not produce much of her own insulin. So she's not, she's not in honeymoon. She takes a small, and she doesn't need to lose weight.
Yeah.
She just takes a small dose of Ozempic weekly, and her numbers are so good
Really?
now, like overnight, just super flat. Like they're
Wow.
beautiful.
That's
Yeah, yeah.
incredible.
Good. Wait, whoa, whoa, whoa,
There it
there.
is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There we go. Yeah. So that's like
Wow.
12 hours, but that flat line is just like
Yeah.
overnight.
Oh,
And she's a teenager, so that's pretty awesome. And
that's very
honestly,
awesome.
I credit sure, she does a great job. I'm proud of her, but I credit some of that to Ozempic.
Right.
And that's, it's not on the market for type 1, but people are doing, as I said, Breakthrough T1D is doing clinical studies. This Carmot, which is acquired by Roche, is in a phase 2 trial, which means they're, testing out the safety and efficacy
Right.
on a group of people with type 1. So I think this is going to be, I believe, and I know that all of the people in research who work in research at Breakthrough T1D really believe that taking care of type 1 before we have cures on the market is going to be a multi-drug therapy situation, that
Sure.
it's not going to just be insulin, because all of these other options make it so much easier. And insulin, what we've had insulin for 100 years. It's time we layered some things onto that and
Right.
made it a little easier to manage. And
That's so
um,
interesting.
yeah,
I can't believe I really haven't heard about that at all with type 1. And that's so right.
yeah.
I mean, it makes sense. And it's been kind of also social, like popularized now too
Right. Yeah,
for
people have heard of it.
vanity.
You know what I'm
So,
talking about. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had Josh said that's a boring curve in a good way about your
Yes.
daughter's
We
results.
love it. We love to be
We
boring.
love that. We love that. Something I'd love to ask you about, and obviously, if you're not sure, just let me know. But I
Sure.
think a lot of people don't realize how much money and time goes into bringing a drug to market.
Mm.
Um, I don't know if you have any kind of idea of what that all entails, because I feel like I've heard crazy numbers, like in the
Yeah.
hundreds and hundreds of millions
Oh, yeah.
and many, many years.
Easily.
And so I don't know if there's any, of, I mean, even the Vertex, right? Like how long
Yeah.
that took, if you have
Yeah.
any
Well, I
information
think,
or background.
yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I'm, talking a lot about human clinical studies, and because that's what we can act on, right? As a
Right.
community, we can join these studies, we can, follow these studies to see what's coming down the pipeline. But a lot of what Breakthrough T1D is funding is what we call preclinical, or it's before things are in human clinical studies. And so the amount of work that goes into things before they get to human clinical studies, I'll use, as you said, we can use Vertex as an example. It was what we're in 2024 now. It was in the year 2000 that JDRF awarded a grant to a physician named Doug Melton, um, who was working on creating insulin producing islet cells from stem cells in his lab. And so JDRF made that grant, and in the year 2000, and in the year 2014, he succeeded. So that's like 14
14
years
years.
of lab research.
And how
And that's
much money? I
fast.
mean, that's a lot. It takes a lot of effort.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of time, and it's a lot of money. And once he was able to do that, he created a company that was then acquired by Vertex in 2017. So, time keeps marching on. And, when, the JDRF Type 1 Fund made an investment in the company that Doug Melton founded to bring these stem cell producing islet cells to market eventually. But again, his company was a small company despite the funding that they received. So Vertex then acquired them. And just to give a sense of like what they saw the value to be, they acquired Sema Pharmaceuticals, which was Doug Melton's company, named after his children, Sam and Emma, who both had type 1.
Yep.
They acquired it for 950 million, so almost $1 billion.
Everybody has that
Um,
laying around, right?
oh yeah. Well, luckily for us, these big pharmaceutical companies
They
do,
did.
because
Yeah.
no one else could run the clinical trials that are needed to get them to market, because that's the kind of money that you need to run clinical studies. Like if you're, and that's why I'm so passionate about getting people into clinical studies and making people know about these clinical studies,
Right.
because part of the reason they're so expensive is the time it takes to recruit. And there's a statistic I heard when I first got involved in this, is that 80% of trials fail because they don't recruit enough people.
Oh,
And I
all
think so
that
much of it is
research.
just, yeah. And I think part of it is just people don't know about them. Like
Mhm.
the people doing the research are not the best marketers. And
Right. Yeah.
it's a little bit obscure. And so
People are
how do we get the word
scared and
out?
wary of clinical trials. We actually had
Yeah.
Anastasia Albanese O'Neill from
Yeah.
Breakthrough
Oh, she's
T1D
the
on.
best.
Yeah,
Oh,
and just
okay.
talking about clinical trials and how
Yeah.
I think one common misconception she pointed out was that people think that it's somebody always like poking you, or,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
something implanted or something taken from you, when really it can also be like psychosocial. Like there are
Totally. Yeah.
so many different types of clinical trials, and it's really whatever you're comfortable with,
Yeah.
obviously. And
Yeah.
it's all anonymous. Like, you can really
Yeah.
like participate in whatever way you feel comfortable with, which,
And another side benefit, Monique,
yeah,
Diablo Clinical in Walnut Creek in California, they run a lot of these device clinical trials. So there's a little bit of poking, but it's not
yeah,
like, an
sure.
implanted thing or like a
Yeah.
surgery. But they often pay like thousands of dollars to people to be in
Wow.
these clinical studies. So
Yeah,
I have a whole community of like teenagers and college students who are like, this is my job.
sure.
I do
Yeah.
clinical studies. And things like testing out a 14-day Dexcom sensor. They put 3 of them on you. You come back a few times. They watch your numbers,
Yeah.
and that's it. It's pretty simple, but it's just, if you can have a few more days of wearing your sensor, that's improving lives. So it's
Exactly.
a great, yeah,
Right. Yeah. I mean, oh, we actually have a question for you, if you don't mind.
yeah.
Do clinical trials tend to be conservative or cautious when it comes to interpreting the results for T1D treatments and getting approval for the next phase? For example, you hear about lows in DKA in trial results, but also that can be common for the T1D experience, not in trials.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I think the FDA in general is somewhat conservative, and they're the people putting the trials together are very thoughtful about how they do it so that they can get the best results. And so, as you say, DKA might be something that, one out of, I don't know, 500 people are experiencing anyway. So generally, they will either have what they call a placebo group so that they can compare like how many people in this group that's not getting the drug or the test or the implant or the CGM, like how many people in that group, or the GLP-1, how many people in a group not getting it, or maybe they're getting, instead of, you know, maybe there's something about like getting an injection that is giving you DKA. So they'll give you
Sure.
like just a
Saline?
I don't saline. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
saline. I was trying to think of the word. Thank you,
Mm-hmm.
Monique.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you like a saline injection instead and compare like, okay, do those people get DKA as well? And so they're definitely conservative, and but they try to create the studies in a way that they can make the best decisions and
Sure.
understand the trade-offs, because you're right. I mean, if somebody has a low in a study, that doesn't mean we shouldn't bring that drug to market. It just means we need to look at it more closely. Why did they have
Why
that
they have a
low?
low.
And yeah, and can we mitigate for that? Can we have endocrinologists changing their settings as they go along to see like, well, does this work if you're a little more, if you sort of dial back your insulin while you're taking the GLP-1? And the people creating the studies are very thoughtful about doing that and
Right.
making sure that they work. At the same time, there have been studies, like I said, historically, where that maybe didn't happen as well as it could have. And so decisions were made, but now we're revisiting and trying to see like, can we do a study and see if there can be a better outcome?
That's got to be so difficult to try to anticipate all of the possible outcomes and like
Yeah.
have all this pressure on this clinical trial that you've been working
Yeah.
so hard towards as a researcher.
Yes, and putting millions of dollars into,
Yeah.
right? It is
Oh, that's got to be a
absolutely.
lot. Okay, so you mentioned that you're a volunteer as well, kind of on the clinical trial side, which makes
Yeah.
sense, obviously, with your role with Northern California chapter.
Yeah.
What organizations does Breakthrough T1D partner with to support clinical research?
Well, um, there's a lot of different areas that Breakthrough TUND has partners. Like one is other funders, like Helmsley Charitable Trust is a really big funder in type 1 diabetes. And so a lot of times
Oh,
Breakthrough
really?
TUND and Helmsley will contribute together to support
Oh,
some
that's great.
research. One of the things that I love that Breakthrough TUND is doing is, I don't know if anyone here has heard of the centers of excellence that have been created. Um,
They might have
so
in passing. We have not had something on centers
okay.
of excellence, so that's a
Yeah,
great
so there are a
segment.
few different regions. I think there's one in Boston, one in the Midwest. I know there's one that's in Northern California. And what the Centers of Excellence is taking the best researchers from the best universities and funding them as a consortium. So here in the Bay Area, it's Stanford and UCSF who have different expertise and different people working on research in the lab. This is like before clinical trials, preclinical. Um, and a lot of times, if I don't know if anybody on this call has ever worked in scientific research, but in scientific research, you spend a lot of time writing grants, trying to get your research funded. And that takes a lot of time away from doing the actual research. So what Breakthrough T1D has done is given a 10-year runway to these groups of people to work together on cure research for type 1 diabetes. And so they don't need to keep going out and asking for money and stopping their research and saying, I don't know if I can continue this because I don't have the funding for it. They are funded for 10 years from Breakthrough T1D, and they are collaborating with researchers who are looking at different areas, which I think can bring about some really incredible and impactful results. So for example, like, one university might be looking at stem cell replacement therapy and how do you manufacture stem cells? And the other might be looking at, well, how do you protect the stem cells? And so bringing those universities
Sure.
together with, a substantial amount of funding that was raised specifically for these centers of excellence is, I think, going to be where we see some of the next incredible cure research coming from.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, really want to go to a centers of excellence. It just sounds like it's like you said, the best of the best, and
Yeah,
it's really hard not to be inspired in a kind of environment like that.
I was so lucky to have the opportunity to go on
Oh,
a
you did?
tour
Oh
of the
gosh.
labs at
Yeah.
UCSF that are involved in this, and I mean, they're like engineering stem cells to have, I don't know if we talked about it on this call yet, but I think we did, TZIELD, where
Yep.
you can delay the onset.
It's
But
3 to 5 years now?
it's, yeah, on average it's 3, but it's
3.
been going on for 12 years, and 30% of the people who went through that trial don't have T1D. So
Still.
it's a range. It's a range.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And that was
Um,
determined by screening that they were likely going to get it, right?
yeah, so
Yeah.
they did autoantibody tests. If
Right.
people, you can do an autoantibody test. You can do it through TrialNet. Then if you don't have autoantibodies, you can go to your doctor and order a T1D screening and see how many autoantibodies you have. And if you have more than two, then you have, I think, close to a 90% chance of developing type 1. And so as soon as you know that you have two, you want to be really careful to measure your glucose, because as soon as it goes wonky,
Right.
you're eligible to get TZIELD, which can help delay the onset, or for like a myriad of other clinical trials. TZIELD's still like working on insurance coverage, and it's expensive, and it's a 12-day infusion. So
12
it's not,
days? I don't think I
yeah,
knew that.
yeah. So
Yeah.
but that trial was available for my daughter when she was diagnosed. The not the one that prevents type 1, but the one that, keeps you in honeymoon, was called the
Yes.
Protect study.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, shots are enough. I'm not doing a 12-day infusion.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
But, I wish
Understandable.
in retrospect, now that we know how powerful this drug is, I wish we had, but
Right.
that was the call at the time. But I don't even know where I was going. I am like, oh yes, the Centers of Excellence. I went on
Yes.
this
Yeah.
tour. So they're actually like developing stem cells there, manufacturing stem cells that have sort of TZIELD baked into them, because TZIELD is really a protein.
Really?
And so if you replace your stem cells with something that, has is sort of like TZIELD as part of it, then that might be another protective mechanism for,
Wow.
creating, for preventing the destruction of those cells once they're put in your body. So there's just crazy stuff happening that um, I didn't even know about until I went on this tour. So yes, Monique, if you can get on a tour of a center of excellence, I'm sure you can with your role.
Oh God.
It's really inspiring.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
I
is
left
so
that saying
interesting.
like I left that tour and like I give money to Breakthrough T1D, but I left that tour and was like, I talked to my husband. I'm like, we have to donate more now because they need to keep doing this work without interruption. And yeah, it was really inspiring.
Oh, that is so great to hear. Thanks for sharing. I think that's when Hans told me, like, you need to talk to Kim because I think, didn't he go on that Centers of Excellence
Yes,
tour?
he was with me on that tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he said that you reported or talked about it and it was really well done. So I think that was a part of it too. But
Yeah.
that seriously so fascinating. All the things that Breakthrough T1D has played like a big role in and continues to. And I
Yeah.
love what you said at the beginning, how it's like 80, 90%, like all these advancements have really been brought forth because of Breakthrough T1D and the commitment of everybody here and also the leadership and really having the foresight of what, is going to be impactful for people living with T1D. And I think that's what makes it so impressive that
Yeah.
just all of everything that comes out, you just, what's the connection here? And then there's always a connection to Breakthrough T1D. Breakthrough
Yeah.
T1D did this, did this, did this, which is so cool.
Yeah. And just to give people a sense too of the progress, Sanjay Dutta, who is the in charge of research for
Mm,
Breakthrough T1D, on a talk the other day, he said when he started 10 years ago, there were 10 type 1 clinical trials,
just
like
10.
10, just 10, like period.
So
Like
in
this is not,
2014, there were only 10.
there were 10. So if you think about everything that we have available to us today, all of the closed loop systems, faster insulins, inhaled insulin, like there's a lot that we have that we didn't have 10 years ago. And there were 10 trials. So now there's over 100. To me, that
Wow.
means like 10 years from now, it's going to be a lot better.
A
Yeah.
thousand?
Yeah. Yeah. We'll all see boring graphs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, but you said too, like making sure the trials are like filled. I just put a link in
Yeah.
chat where people could find local clinical trials. Are there any clinical trials that like your daughter has participated in that like were positive or like what kind of experience, she
Yeah,
had?
so, my daughter is one of those people Anastasia talked about who doesn't want any extra
Yeah.
pokes. My daughter was diagnosed 5 years ago. She has never done a finger stick. Um,
Hey, that is a
she,
huge accomplishment too, being a T1D. Oh my
yeah, that it's
gosh.
possible, right? That it's
Yeah.
possible is pretty cool.
Wow.
Like she's really anti-poke. So, she has, as you said, done a bunch of these. Like she did a clinical study that was on how meditation and
Oh.
sort of mindfulness can impact T1D, where she had this app and then she, had to do like 10 minutes a day of meditation or whatever I don't know, but they were giving her on the app, and then they like compared her numbers. They followed her CGM and compared her numbers and how that
Oh,
affected. So
interesting.
she's done a lot of studies like that. She donated her data to, Tide Pool so that they could use that in
Oh,
developing,
cool.
the Tide Pool loop. And so
Yeah.
she's done any studies she can where she
That don't
doesn't have to
involve
get poked.
poking?
Yeah.
Hey,
Although
that's fair.
she did look really deeply into doing this study that a friend of mine's daughter ended up doing, where a bunch of teenagers stayed at an Airbnb, which sounded like a lot of fun, and they were testing out a tandem new closed loop algorithm, and
Mm,
they were told not to bolus. So it was like a don't deal with your type 1 study. It's a more aggressive algorithm that they're looking at, and
sure.
they were just looking at, can your numbers be okay even without bolusing, which
Interesting.
is really interesting. And I think that's another area that's fascinating, like between faster insulins, which are definitely in development, and really good closed loop algorithms, can we get to the point where where bolusing is a little more optional, and we don't have to think about type 1 as much. And that's a development that I think we'll see a lot of progress in as faster insulins become available. And, and right now I know there's a lot of people who are on iApps or Android
Mm-hmm.
apps, which is a closed loop system that has a really great algorithm that, are getting by without bolusing and doing all right. So I think those are some pretty exciting developments as well. And Breakthrough T1D, years and years ago founded the closed loop, I think it was called the closed loop consortium to like
Mm-hmm.
get going with all this. So seeing that as like a standard of care now to me is really, really exciting.
That is really cool. It's always exciting in our Discord community. It's kind of like teams for our community.
Yeah.
People will post about how they get like their new devices
Yeah.
and stuff that's communicating to each other now, and how it's just
Yeah.
made their life like incredibly easier. And even
Totally.
just like we've had people that have had the Eversense
Oh,
on
cool. Yeah.
the 6 month CGM.
6 months. Yeah.
And that, I mean, just seeing that too, and just that you, like you said, making it so you don't have to think about it as much during the day, like that's got to
Yeah.
be very liberating. I still can't believe your
Yeah.
daughter's never gotten a finger prick too. Like that's crazy.
She won't even do the A1C test at the
Yeah,
doctor's office. She's like, I know my numbers. I don't need my A1C.
yeah.
Don't prick my finger.
God, can you imagine that? Like, can you imagine like having type 1 for this long too? Like what, like 30, 40 years and then seeing all this progress too with technology? Like
Yeah.
you're like a walking testament to the progress.
Well, that's one thing too that I feel is important. And I don't know if anybody on this call like knows anyone who's had type 1 or has had type 1 for that long, but I feel like the people who are involved with Breakthrough T1D and the people on things like this Twitch call are sort of savvy about what's going on. And I keep meeting people like just like neighbors who've had it for 40 years who don't even know that there are closed loop systems because they've just been giving insulin injections for so
Right.
long
It's a routine.
that they're just like, well, I'm just doing what I do. So I don't, that's to me the biggest challenge. Like, how do we get the word out about all of this
Yeah.
to everybody, to the people who have had type 1 for 40 years and are not really paying attention anymore to what's new, because why would they, right? Like 10 years ago there were 10 trials. Why would they
Right.
keep paying attention when they were diagnosed
Or
40
when they
years
were
ago?
told 5 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kim, I think we just
Yeah.
need to, get the major news networks to give you like an hour slot and you can just let them know what's going on.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know we talked about a lot already. Is there anything that we've missed that you want, like you're excited about, or that you want the community to know about that's happening that you've seen, either clinical trials, treatment, research, even like advocacy, what have you? Is there anything you want to share with our community?
Well, I think just, if you Google Breakthrough T1D and clinical trials, you can do a search and
Yep.
you can add yourself to I think they send you out information. If so, you basically put in like, where do you live? How far would you travel for a study? How long have you had type 1? What's your age? And they will run a match for you of what clinical trials are a fit. And so, if you want to do like a mental health study that takes no pokes, and
Yeah.
they give you a $50 Amazon gift card to thank you for your work, and you get to like meditate to this app. Or if
Yeah.
you want to like do something more intense or be part of a cure trial, because that's pretty exciting too.
Mhm.
um I think just be on the lookout. You can also go directly, clinicaltrials.gov is the source for all clinical studies that are happening. And
In
you
the
can,
US, yep.
in the US, but a lot of them are international. So
Yeah.
a lot of it you can actually find in clinicaltrials.gov. If you scroll down to the bottom of every study, it'll say that where they're happening, and often they're happening in the UK or Australia as
Right.
well. And they'll have the
Perfect.
contact details for the study center closest to you. So it's not just the US.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just be on the lookout if you're willing to participate, or, if you hear, to me, I just want to like give a call out. Like if you hear of anyone who's newly diagnosed, um, or who has family members with type 1, to like do those autoantibody tests. I have a 15-year-old daughter and an 18-year-old daughter. My 18-year-old was diagnosed when she was 13. And when my 15-year-old turned 13. We did the autoantibody test and she had one autoantibody, which was terrifying, but so good to know because if she gets another, we can look at TZIELD and delay the onset, an average of 3 years, which is a really, really long time. So, just be aware of all that and, look at join a clinical study. And that's my final word.
Oh man, Kim, we have covered years and years and many topics in a very short period of time. And I have to confirm you are an incredible guest and
Oh,
so
thank
well
you.
informed on everything that's happening in the T1D space related to research and trials and beyond. It's been such a pleasure to have you today. Thank you to everybody who joined in, asked some great questions. Just really had some really engaging conversation. Obviously, there's so much happening right now in the type 1 diabetes space. It's so hard to keep up. So we're really grateful for people like him who are willing to help keep us updated.